So we have a very short PowerPoint tonight, and then we'll actually be moving into a live demonstration on the control panel, which we have set up since the earlier webinar. So you guys are lucky you get to experience that. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll here, share the results. It's actually, the results were tied, surprisingly. It's actually Maker's Mark this time. Some of those other ones we hit up in previous webinars. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dive in here. What are we going to be covering today? So we're going to be talking about what is the control panel, obviously. And then within the control panel, we're going to be deep diving into the device list, show controls, and obviously I'm going to talk a lot about these once we get into it. So I'll explain all of these in much detail. Manual, fire, and field map. And then lastly, I'm going to pass over to Scott, and he's going to talk about the command center integration with the control panel. So what is the control panel? The control panel is an Android application. It's currently only on Android. We do not have any plans to make it available on Mac. You can download it on the Google Play Store on just about any Android device, and I'm going to talk about recommended device in a second.
Do you want me to comment a bit on that?
Yes, if you would like to hop right in there.
All right, why not? Because I know people have the question to say, hey, why don't you support the control panel on Mac? And there's a couple of reasons. Number one, when you're developing applications of this size, and for a company like COBRA and kind of in our market, it's actually a substantial amount of hours to go into this type of development. We had to kind of make a choice between Android or iOS. And we chose Android primarily just because of the hardware flexibility and the cost in options, right? So there's so many different Android devices that are out there, varying in size, battery life, memory, different peripheral type options that you may choose. So it's a huge variety of options that exist. And also on top of that, we were a little bit afraid of iOS, and they tend to have a slightly different approach with hardware, and we're a little bit afraid of the OTG cable and whether or not they may or may not support that long term. And so we felt that Android was a lower risk, and for that reason, we went with Android. So,
thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
All right, so it is essentially a graphical user interface into the HNR2. And so what do I mean by that? So if you're using the HNR2 today, all of your information is on the 7-segment displays as well as the QLEDs. That's everything you see. So what we do is we take all that information from the remote and we put it onto a nice graphical interface onto your tablet. It does require firmware version 4.0 or newer, and with new firmware releases, new features are available, meaning that firmware version 4.0 doesn't have the same features that are in 5.0, and then once we release new firmware, such as 5.1 in the future, additional features will also be released. It does require an on-the-go cable. Every new 18R2 purchase does come with an OTG cable. If you do not have one, we also sell them on our website. It is important to note that some tablets require a micro USB connection and some require a USB-C connection. A lot of newer tablets are moving over to USB-C. So when you're purchasing a cable, make sure that you know what tablet connection you need. There are both a free and a paid version. This is something a lot of people don't know. So today you can take advantage of the free version as long as you have an Android tablet, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. And then of course we have the paid version too. As far as tablet recommendations go, pretty much any new device that has at least 2 GB of RAM is going to run the control panel just fine. We commonly reference Samsung, Lenovo tablets. I personally have a lot of experience with those type of tablets. This is one of the big reasons why I recommend them. But pretty much any new tablet, my audio's going up and down. We were talking about it right before the webinar, wondering if it was going to do that. So I'll try to not move maybe. Anyway, any new tablet, at least 2 GB of RAM, should run it just fine. So at this point in time, I want to move over to a live demonstration. I have a tablet set up in front of me, and I'm actually screen sharing the tablet to my computer, and I'll screen share that. So there might be a little bit of a delay. I'll try my best to go slow so that way it's not choppy.
We did have one question is, with the tablet you did purchase, if you have to purchase a different tablet, can you transfer the license?
Yes, we can. You just have to email us, and we will take care of that for you. So yeah, this is just a general poll to see how many people are actually using the control panel today, just so I get a sense of everyone's familiarity with it. Let me set up my other share real quick while you guys answer that.
And it's also worth noting that the control panel is actually a lifetime license compared to like a show creator product. Once you buy the control panel, it's a one-time purchase. Any improvements or developments are included within that price.
I only have the ability to make it a single or multiple choice poll. I don't really have a lot of flexibility there, unfortunately. Someone mentioned the poll. Anyway, a few people haven't answered, but the results right now are, for the most part, you are using the control panel, but there's still a lot that are not. So that's great. That's we're glad you're here today. And a few people are still holding out for that Mac version. Okay. One second here. All right. So once you download the control panel from the Play Store, it's going to prompt you to enter in your license key if you have paid for it. Otherwise, there's going to be an option right on this screen here for the free mode. In this case, we're already activated, so we only have the pro mode. You'll see we do have language selection down here at the bottom. And once I click this pro icon, it's going to enter into the control panel. And the first thing it's going to be doing here is going to be loading my scripts from the remote onto my tablet. And just give it a second here to load. I'm going to switch back over to the main screen, which is the device list. So what you see right now, the device list is part of the free version. Everything else after the device list is part of the paid version. So I'm going to go through all the information on this screen, starting with the top right. So up here, you'll see the 1802 information. In this case, we have our battery level, the channel the 1802 is on, if it's in test or ARM mode. The cool thing about the control panel is it shows the battery of your 1802, where previously you only see that battery level when you first turn the unit on. So we can actually access that directly from the control panel. Next here in the middle on our top header row is the total number of devices we have currently on and synced to our remote. So in this case, you'll see there's 5. 0 are armed, meaning the 1802 is not armed and no modules are therefore armed. 5 are in test, and then we have 5 exceptions here. We'll talk about the exceptions once we get down to the module rows here. So then each of these rows, sorry about that, each of these rows here are an individual channel. So for example, down here about halfway through, you'll see there's a 36M. And since our 36Ms are split into 2 channels, it shows as 2 separate lines on this list. But for the total number of devices, that still shows as 1. And if you're confused by that, there's this detail button in the top header row here, right here. If you click on this, it's going to give you a breakdown of what modules you have on. So in this case, you'll see we have 1 audio box, 3 18Ms, and 1 36M. Okay. So now I want to go through each column here. The first column is the device, in this case 18M, 36M, audio box, 72M, and in the future 6M will show in that list. Second column is the address of the module, which is assigned when you sync the module to the remote. The third column here is my channel. So you'll see in this case we're just using 1 through 5. The next column is my key position. So you'll see this is an ARM. And that is the ARM key position on the module, right? So it's an ARM here. If this was in the test key position, that column would show green and show as being test. One of the great things about how this is laid out is you can see all these modules at a quick glance. So if you forgot to put a module into the ARM key position, you'll quickly be able to identify that on your tablet. Whereas before, you would have to remember how many devices you had, sync to the remote, and you'd have to watch for that count to show on your remote. Where in this case, at a quick glance, I can say, oh, all are armed, I'm good to go. Or oops, I forgot to put one into ARM. The next column here is the mode for both firing and voltage. And it's hard to see on the screen share, but there's a little icon in the bottom corner here. That just means you can click on that column to bring up additional information. So if we just click on the eMatch 9 volt there, it'll bring up this little pop-up window. And from this pop-up window, it gives us the ability to change both the firing and the voltage mode from the tablet, where previously you had to physically do that on the module. Also, if you're not sure what a firing or voltage mode is, there's this Learn More button up here that you can click. We have these all throughout the control panel. So if there's ever a question of what this is or what that does, you'll see these question mark buttons or Learn More buttons all throughout to provide additional information for you. The next column here is the signal column. And so again, at a quick glance, I can see all of my modules have fantastic signal. So if a module had bad signal, that will show it's color coded. So it'll show if it's mediocre, like -70 to -75, where it's like, hey, it's okay, but it's getting out there, it'll show as orange. And then if it's bad, it's -75 up to -99, it'll show as red. And you can click on this. So if we click on that column, you'll see my signal strength plotted over time. So in this case, it's just showing the last minute, and you can see my best, worst, and average signal on this module. And that's cool because if you were ever testing signal, and let's say people are still working on your shoot site, you might see going through the remote, a signal strength kind of jump up. And like, why is that signal strength so bad? It might be because someone is currently blocking the line of sight to that module. But this graph could show you over time, let's hypothetically say it was showing average of 50s, but 1 or 2 cases, it spiked down to -75. And you're like, oh, okay, so that was obviously someone blocking that line of sight. The next column here is the battery column. So we have our 1P and 2P columns. In this case, these modules are 9 volt. So each of these are the 1P and 2P batteries. If you're using LiPo, technically this would be the same battery source, so they're just going to show us the same. And they're both clickable as well. So if you click on those, you'll see your battery life over time as well. Actually, we'll see this one, which is not showing at this specific point in time.
Yeah,
anyway,
I think he's got it, but over time, that number, if you were there,
you'll see it. You'll see it. There it goes.
There it goes.
It's been for about 5 minutes right here on the top. So it's basically saying, hey, I'm full. I've been that way for 5 minutes. So you'll see right here we have a seeing a quick initial battery drop. Sometimes if a battery has been used previously, once it stops being used, the voltage will kind of trickle up. And then when you use the battery again, it has a sharp drop. So initially you might see a P9 and then it'll kind of drop to like a P7 level out. So this graph kind of allows you to see that and then see it stabilize. Okay, so the next column here is the continuity column. And so you'll see we have green, yellow, and red. The green and yellow is exactly what you would see on the remote. Green is I have continuity. Red is I'm missing continuity and expecting that I have continuity. And yellow is I have continuity, but that event is not in my script. And you can click on this column, this grid here. It'll actually show you what is supposed to be there. So in this case, you'll see, like, for example, Q7 is showing red. I'm missing a 50mm mine. And also show you the time in the script that's firing. So it's just easier to find what queues are missing or what product is missing from that queue. So this view exceptions button, how I mentioned up here in the top, there's this 5 for exceptions. That means 5 modules have exceptions. And in this case, the exceptions are all continuity related. But if you had poor signal, poor battery, that'd be flagged as an exception and it would show into your exception count up top. And if you're not sure what the exception is for that module, you can click on this view exception button here on the far right. That's going to say, for example, I have continuity missing on all these queues. And it gives you a little hot fix tips on how to fix it. Okay, so you'll also notice that the second row here has a yellow hue to it. That is because that is the channel that my remote is currently on. So in the top right corner, you'll see 2. That's the channel I'm on. So if I change that on my remote, for example, I just changed it to channel 1, you'll see that yellow highlight then went to 1. It's just kind of an easier way to find what channel you're on. Okay, shifting gears a little bit down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a filter and sort by option. Actually, before we get into that, you'll see audio box down here at the very bottom. So it does show up on here as well. And so one of the cool things about that is it shows your signal and your battery, which doesn't show at all on the audio box. So very helpful.
You want to do a quick poll, Joel, just to break it up a little? We got a bunch.
I can do one.
Yeah. All right. This is a pretty clean question. And it's multiple choice.
But that's, you know, obviously it's the
That's
last
good.
answer on the list.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right, so while that's continuing to kind of trickle in, the last thing we're going to talk about on the device list is the bottom action bar here. So on the bottom left and bottom left, generally speaking, we have a filter and a sort by option. So let's say you have a bunch of modules in your list here. Instead of scrolling through the list, you'll actually, I didn't really mention that, you'll see that the list kind of moves a little bit. That's because I'm physically touching and scrolling on my list. Now in this case, we only see a few lines, but if I had, you know, 100 modules, there'd be a lot of different lines in this list. So the filter sort by options allow you to find very specific modules. So you could filter by a, like for example, exceptions. So if you want to find all modules that have poor signal, poor battery, or if you want to find a very specific channel, you can click on the sort or filter by and you'll see a pop-up appears that has all of those options in there. Actually, yes. So there is 2 modules in this list, channel 6 and 7, that say channel and script, but no module found. Another great feature about the device list is that it shows modules that are not turned on. So it knows based on your script that you should have 6 and 7 turned on. And in this case, they are not. So it's actually showing you here on my list here. So just at a quick glance, you can say, oh crap, I forgot to turn those modules on at all. The last 2 buttons are in the bottom right. We have our refresh device list. When I click that, it's going to repull all the modules information. So if I just click on that, you'll see it kind of cleared out my list here, and then the modules start coming back in. So if you're missing a module, you can use that to try to pull that module in, or if you think information is not updated, you can click on that as well. And the last button is the continuity report. When I click on this, it's going to show me all of the missing continuity from every single module. Instead of scrolling through that list to find like 1 queue missing from this module, 1 queue missing from that module, it'll show me a list here. So like I have a lot missing from channel 3, but you'll see channel 3, channel 4, and so forth. So you can just hit those one by one instead of scrolling through your event list. So again, everything that we've viewed so far is part of the free version. So you have access to this. If you just go to the Google Play Store and download the COBRA control panel, you can access this today on an Android device. So now we're going to be moving into the paid features. So to get to those other features, there is a menu button in the top left, just the 3 lines. You can also slide out from the left, which brings out the left navigation. So now we're going to go on to the show controls. Okay, so we're going to just kind of circle around this screen in order to go through all the pieces of information. The first button here in the top left is my script list. So in this case, I just have 1 script on here. If I had more than 1 script, you click on this little drop down and it'd bring up a little selector for multiple scripts. It also tells me, I have 89 events in this script. The next thing down here is the show clock. Once I start my show, this clock is going to start counting just to give you a sense of how far into the show you are. The next little section here is the show status indicator. So in this case, the show is not playing, it's stopped. So it's going to show as stopped. When the show is playing, it's going to show playing or paused. The next pieces of information, the next event to fire, in this case, you'll see it says 5 seconds. That's because the first event in my script here is showing at 5 seconds. And as the script plays, it's going to count down that section. And then time remaining in my script, queues that have fired and queues remaining. Again, just to kind of give you a sense of where you're at within your show. So down here in the bottom left, we have 2 buttons. We have the script attributes. If you click on that, it's going to bring up this little pop-up. That gives you information such as the trigger channel, trigger button, dead man, if your script has the audio box argument in it for audio synchronization, disable firing, alternate firing, and SMPTE. So if you did not have the control panel and you specified, in this case, channel 0 Q1, you'd have to remember, I need to be on channel 0 Q1 in order to start your show. Using the control panel, not only does it remember it for you, you don't have to worry about it. because this button here, the play button, allows you to start the show without actually touching the trigger button on the remote. You still have to arm from the remote. The remote is still the master of the show, so you still have to physically arm from the remote. Once you are armed, you can start the show from the control panel. I did skip over the continuity report. That is the same continuity report that is in the device list. It just allows you to access it from the show controls as well. So then all of the buttons down here across the bottom are our action buttons for show controls. So play will start the show. Once it is playing, it'll go to pause, which I will do in a second. And then stop as well. Jump to time, if you click on, when you're armed, if you click on that, it'll give you a little scroll wheel. So I'll show you in a second. That allows you to jump to a certain point in your script if you want. Disable auto scroll. Once the show is playing, this will just scroll through the event list as the show is playing. If you don't want that, you want to jump ahead or behind, you can just click the disable auto scroll button. Disable firing, which we talked about in our advanced scripting webinar. This button will disable cues from firing, but will continue the script playing and the audio playing. We also talked about alternate 1 and alternate 2s in our advanced scripting webinar, and you'll see we have 2 buttons here. So in this case, we have 7 cues designated as alternate cues, and if you weren't using the control panel, you would be using a button on the remote to fire those alternates. But on the control panel, you'll see there's a button that actually remembers how many are left. So that way, in your head, you don't have to think, oh, I've already fired 3 alternates, I have 4 remaining. You just click that alternate button, and it's going to increment through your alternate cues for you. The step button here emulates the step button on the eTuner 2. So it does the same function. If you click it while the script is running, it's going to advance to the next event in your script. And the lock button feature allows you to select buttons to disable. For example, you're worried about someone touching the screen accidentally before the show. You can disable all buttons, and then right before the show, enable them and then fire the show. Just a little safety feature we kind of put in there.
And there's also that disable all buttons too. So if you just want to knock everything out, you can just hit that.
You can hit all or individual, whatever you want. If you had a step show, you can use the step button to fire those step events as well. Okay, so at this point I want to arm up, show you what that looks like too. I did forget to mention on the device list, the header row here is showing green. That actually carries throughout the entire control panel. When I arm my remote, it'll turn to red. So green is the remote being a test, red is the remote being armed, and that's when you'll see the test count go to arm. And that is carried throughout the entire control panel. So you don't have to be on the device list to arm up. You could be on another screen, arm up, and you'll still see that information that all modules are indeed armed. So I'm gonna go ahead and arm up on my remote. You'll see that that changed to red. And then here in a few seconds, you'll start to see that module count quickly jump up to armed. And so once it gets to 5, which it is now, you are armed up, ready to fire. And you'll also see the mode for the eTuner 2 in the top right is now changed to arm as well. So just several indicators that, hey, I'm armed, I'm ready to go. So let's say everything's good, we're gonna start our show. All I have to do now is push that play button. And once I do, you'll see the first event is now highlighted as green. Once it hits 5 seconds, that changes to red. Red is the previously fired event. Green is the event to fire next. And so you see it kind of like follows through my screen here, and the list will scroll. So if I disable that scroll, it'll advance. I'm gonna advance it manually. It'll advance to the next queue and allow you to kind of scroll around to see what's coming or what's already fired. And so if there's a problem with your show, you can pause it, and you'll see that status indicator, script indicator, change to paused. Or if I click the stop button, there's a confirmation, hey, do you want to stop your script? Yes. And it will change to stopped. So the jump to time, now that I'm armed, I can click on that, and you'll see it just brings up a little scrolly wheel. So I can just say, like, I want to jump to whatever seconds. Let's say 3 minutes. I could jump ahead. So if for some reason you accidentally stopped your show, you could jump to where you left off. You can also use the jump on the right to jump to a specific event. So for example, if you want to jump to this point in time, you can say, hey, do you want to jump to there? You're like, yeah. So now when I push play, it starts out at 1:42 versus starting out at the beginning. Okay, so I see some Q&A. Do we need to answer some stuff live?
Yeah, well, if you want to do a poll, I can fly through these. Maybe just kind of take a little
Yeah.
pause for everybody. One question from Mark is: are the column headers selectable in the continuity report? For example, can I filter on that column heading? And I mean, I think the answer to that is that the column headers aren't selectable, but if you use the filter feature, you can absolutely quickly, specifically either look for something. So if you're looking for a specific address or a specific channel, you can do that. And also the sorting feature is very helpful. So if you want to say, hey, sort it by my worst signal strength first, or sort it for my lowest lowest or best signal or lowest battery, you could do that. So the sorting feature is helpful. So anyway, filtering and sorting for Mark. Thomas Bell, is there a PC emulator that you would recommend? This came up in the last webinar. We did have a client like 4 or 5 years ago when we first came out with this that was successfully running Genymotion. And we actually also had some other clients that were successfully running, I'm not sure which emulator, but they were running an emulator on a Mac and it was working fine. So I know it's not that simple. So unless you're technical, it may be difficult to get the emulator set up and you may run into roadblocks, but it is in theory possible. So it's not a lost cause. You can certainly try it if you like. Rick White, if you had a step show, will the timer run once you fire the first item of your show? Joel, do you want to answer that? Because I know the step, and especially I think in 5.1, we added a couple of things for that.
Yeah, so as it says today, that timer is going to pause because it's assuming that the show's pausing until you manually start it. We did add a continuous clock that's optional in the next release, which should be here any week now.
Yes.
And then that will basically have 2 clocks, essentially. One that would go pause play and one that would continuously run once you start. Hope that makes sense.
Yep. Ronnie asks, can we see what the free screen looks like while the script? I think Ronnie's referencing manual fire. Maybe Joel, when you get to manual fire, you can have the script running and show how that looks on the manual fire screen. You don't have to do it now, but
I was assuming he meant the free version.
Oh, yeah, that's probably what he meant.
If that is the case, basically, if you're using the free version and you go to the left navigation here, all of these options, show controls, manual fire, field map, will just be grayed out. So you'll only have access to the device list. You can still fire a script from the device list screen. Let me rephrase that. You can have a script fire on a remote and still be on the device list screen. It's not gonna change anything. It doesn't give you access to these other 3 menus. If that doesn't answer your question, okay, I think it did.
Yeah. Right. So that answered that. James, questions on AudioBox and LiPo, so we can answer that stuff later, but we don't have an ETA, but those are in the works right now. Any thoughts on moving to the green next field to fire to the to fire to the middle of the screen to be able to see more than just the last thing fired? Any thoughts on moving to the green next field?
Oh, so it just auto scrolls
in like carrying it down to the middle versus like have it at the top. Yeah.
Oh, I got it. That's the first time I've heard that request. So that's good feedback. Like I could see that being an option. Thanks, Greg.
All right. If there's no additional questions, I'll continue on. We're going to be moving on to the manual fire screen now. I think I covered everything on this. If I didn't, someone please stop me. So again, we'll just scroll out to the left navigation and I'm going to click on manual fire. So the whole idea behind manual fire is to allow you to easily fire cues manually versus using the remote. So on the remote today, if I wanted to fire Q1 on channel 1, I have to go up and manually fire this cue. And then let's say I want to go to channel 2, I'd have to push up, then push Q1. But the manual fire on the control panel allows you to see all of your modules here on this left navigation. And I can click on any of these modules to change to them and then fire a cue very easily. So every time I click on one of these modules, you'll see not only is it updating the information here in the middle, the channel on the ATR2 is also updating, so it does it for you. So you don't have to manually go change the channel on the remote, it's just doing that. So before we talk about what's on the middle of the screen, I want to talk about what the module information you're seeing. So for this case, let's just take a look at channel 1 here. It's showing 6F18 in green. That's telling me that I have 6 cues on that module that have continuity. as you fire them, that number is going to decrement. It's going to decrease all the way down to 0. Once it gets to 0, it's going to show, like this module here, 0 of 18, which will be all queues have fired. So again, at a quick glance, I see 6, 2, and 2. So I know I have 10 queues left. That also shows on the far right here with my queues remaining. So let's go ahead and, oh, actually at this, yeah.
Playing the blue versus the green, just so people understand that.
Yeah. Good
I know
to
you'll get to that. But.
So the two bottom buttons here on the left, the add module button and the reset all button. The add module button is primarily used for offline mode. And so what is offline mode? Because I forgot to talk about this earlier, so I want to make sure I hit on this. You, without the remote, can still open the control panel and go to manual fire and field map. And for example, using this add module button, you can add module 1, 2, 3, whatever modules you're using, set them up in advanced. So that way, when you're ready to bring out your remote, you can connect it and it'll populate those modules for you. Instead of having the remote and all of your modules out to do this, you can do it without that equipment and then bring it online to fill that out. In order to get to offline mode, you would open the app just like you normally would without the remote connected, push the circle power button on the main screen, and there's going to be a pop-up that says, hey, your remote's not there, and there's a little button in the top right that says offline mode. And so that's how you access the offline mode. So that's pretty much the main reason for the add module button. Reset all is just going to clear out my whole screen here. It's going to reset everything I'm going to talk about in a second with the signing queues and my module list and refresh that. So then go into this middle section here. At the top middle, you'll see a timer. That's showing us 4 minutes and 31 seconds because when you start firing, that starts counting. So we had fired that script and I had jumped to the end of the script. That clock was actually counting on this screen at the same time. So if we wanted to reset that, there is an option to reset history and show clock down here in the bottom right. So I'm just going to click that so you see that reset to 0. Okay. So then you'll see in the top right here, continuity good, but in script. So these blue queues that Scott mentioned a second ago are queues that are already being fired in my script. So if you have a script running, but also want to manually fire queues, for example, you just want to hit some fireballs at a very specific point in time or whatever the situation is, you can set that up and this will tell you if those queues are already being used so that way you don't use them. And in the future, we've added a lot of options here so you can actually like hide modules that are in your script. That way, if you have 20 modules, but only one is going to be manually fired, you can actually just hide those from your screen so you don't have to worry about them and just see that one specific module that you want to fire. So we can assign a module label as well as specific fireworks to each of these queues, and those options are down here on the bottom. So if I click on add module label, it's just going to give me a little text field so I can type in whatever I want, and it'll just add a little module label to this module. That module label also shows on the module, in the left list too.
A couple people asked Joel about the offline mode feature and if that's a new feature, and just to explain that one more time maybe to people what it means, what the offline feature means for like.
Sure, not a new feature, kind of hidden because it has to be accessed from that pop-up that says you don't have a remote connected. But basically what that allows you to do is come into the manual fire or field map screens without your remote turned on and not your modules turned on. And you can add a module here. So like, let's just click on that button real quick. You'll see it brings up our channel grid. And let's just say I have whatever, channel 60. Click on that, maybe 3, 4 modules. And then you click add, and it's going to add them to my list here on the left. And then so with like channel 63 added, I can assign labels and fireworks to those queues. And then when I go to connect my remote, if a module is on channel 63, it's going to go, hey, that's my assigned module there. It's going to pre-populate that. Offline mode is not available in the free version. It's only in the paid version.
Let's see here. So a couple questions. In manual mode, is there risk of fat fingering more than one queue at once if you don't touch the queue precisely?
So it's probably difficult to tell how big those queues are. It's going to, I mean, so on my tablet here, they're quite large. So for me personally, on a 10-inch tablet, I won't have problems. I guess that's probably what device you're using and user specific.
Yeah,
Once we get, yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead. I would also probably say compared to the 18R2, generally speaking, assuming you've got a 10-inch tablet, those buttons are going to be spread out a little bit wider than, obviously,
there's.
Can you
Go ahead.
fire more than one at once? Like if you
if you push 3 or something like that, you could fire all 3. There is another option with firing on this screen that maybe will be helpful for you. So let me get through the assigning calibers and I'll hit that because I think maybe that'll satisfy.
Can we ask one more that I think is kind of related to the module section on the left, Joel, and then allow you to keep going? So I think the question is, can multiple modules be set to manual fire mode? I think what maybe Jason's asking is, what happens if like two modules are on the same channel?
Yeah, it'll show
the user.
Yeah, so let me just clear out these modules I added. You see the little X here on the bottom right of these modules right here. If I click on that, it's going to say, do you want to remove this module? So I'm just going to clean that up so that way it's not in my way. But if you had 2 modules on the same channel, so like channel 1 up here, sorry, it's lagging a little bit behind me. Let me catch up. Okay, so channel 1 here, if I add another module on channel 1, so I just click on the add module, click on channel 1, click add, you'll see it's showing separate here, but once I arm, those 2 combine, and it's going to show X2, two times modules on channel 1. And then when you fire those queues, it's going to fire both at the same time.
Do you want to arm it real quick just to show that?
Yeah, let me get through the assignment.
Okay,
like that'll be the next thing. Okay, so let's say I want to assign notes to these queues so I know exactly what I'm going to fire. There's this assign queue caliber button down here, and when you click on this, it's going to bring up a little grid. We have predefined events in here. You can change those. So for example, if you're not from the United States and don't use inches, you can clear those all out and put in millimeters or whatever you want. You can also add just in your own custom items. So let's just say I want to say I'm going to use 3-inch shells on a few of these. This caliber up here, 3-inch was selected, and I just click on my queues. If you click on 4-inch, you can then assign 4-inch to queues. If you want to assign like a custom cake, you can click on the manage cake button in the bottom right, and you can add a cake name. So like, let's just test. And you'll see now that cake is saved into my like cake inventory. And then I can assign that as well. That's actually supposed to be right there. Yeah. Sorry, the screen's lagging a little bit behind me, so I'm trying not to go too fast for you. Anyway, so in this case, let's say we're good. Click save, and you'll see 3-inch, 4-inch tests have now been assigned to all of my queues. So everything's set up. Now you're ready to fire. So we're going to go ahead and arm my remote again. See that header row changes to red. My module count is going to change to 5 here in a second. The channel 1, the one I added, and the live one now show as 1 unit here. And you'll see that X2 that I was talking about shows it here as well, just telling me I have 2 modules on channel 1. Okay, so in order to fire, we have several options. So someone mentioned fat fingering queues. The bottom step button here, this is what we call a smart step. And what this means is it's going to start firing the first queue with continuity on that module, and it's only going to fire the next queue with continuity after it. What's different about it versus the regular step button is the regular step button is just going to fire queue 1, 2, 3 sequentially all the way through the module and then go to the next module. The smart step will skip queues if they don't have continuity. So if I, for example, fire 1 through 6, instead of firing 7 through 18 on this module like the regular step button does, it's going to skip up to channel 2 because there's now continuity on channel 2. So if I just fire that, you'll see channel 1, Q2 is going to be the next event I fire. So instead of clicking on the grid, you can use that smart step button, and that should eliminate, the fear of fat fingering if that's better for you. But you can still just click on a queue on the event list here. So if I, for example, fire Q5, you'll see that Q5 is now blinking red, just like the 18R2. Blinking red is the last queue I fired. Red is previously fired, and in this case, blue or green are queues that have continuity. Also, you might notice that when I fire those queues, they are showing here on the right side in my manual firing history. So you'll see that I fired channel 1 Q1 at 0 seconds, 17 seconds later, I fired channel 1 Q5. So it kind of gives you a mental history of everything that's firing in your show. And with the cues remaining and cues fired here and the show clock, if you need to have a show last for a certain point of time, 10 minutes or so, you might say, I'm 8 minutes in and I only have 3 shells left. Obviously, it's not realistic, but you need to space them out. So the whole point of the cues remaining, cues fired, the show clock is to kind of help you know the progress of the show and what you need to fire. If you don't want to use that smart step button, you can lock it. That's what this lock step button does down here. So if you just don't think you're gonna use it, you can click on that. So like I said, if you want to fire a bunch of channels, you can just click on additional channels in the left navigation here. You'll see that changes to channel 2, or if I click on channel 3, it changes to channel 3. So I can fire a cue and then bounce to the next cue. And you'll see I fired 2 and 3 on this module, and now that channel goes down to 0 of 18. And let's go back to 3. Fire those. You'll see that's now 0 of 18. Fire all 4 of those, and now you'll see all of my cues have been fired. The continuity report in the bottom right, the same continuity report you see on device list and show controls, does the exact same thing. So when I disarmed, you'll notice the clock here is still showing my previous time. And we did that so that way after the show, you can still verify, oh yeah, I hit my 10-minute time frame I needed to hit, or whatever the situation is, as well as being able to see that history and how many cues you fired. And then new show, you can just hit the reset history and show clock button down here, and it's going to clear all that out. All that being the time and the history. If you need to clear like my calibers that I've assigned, you just click the reset all button in the bottom left. One other thing to note on here, if you start a script from the show controls, so let me do that real quick for you. You can start the script, and then you can go to your manual fire screen, and you'll see that now I have this section in the middle, and that's my script feed. So that's showing me what was the last cue that fired and the next cue to fire. So the script can be running, and you can switch over to the manual fire and still be able to manually fire cues, but get a sense of where you're still at in your show. And like I mentioned, when we first went to manual fire, the clock did start with the show controls. So that also gives you a sense of where the script is at as far as time. Let's go disarm. So that wraps up manual fire. Is there questions on manual fire before we switch over to field map?
There is a general question. So Grant Powers says that Goonies never say die. Grant says, can we pull in this information from custom columns on the script?
Not currently, no. Just felt like a good time to take a slight break, launch a poll, make sure everyone is still with us. I'm not really paying much attention to chat or Q&A, so hopefully not going too fast.
Yeah, I lost internet. I've been losing internet here now.
We just finished, so thanks for coming back.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
Just taking a slight intermission here, got a poll launched, and we'll be moving on to the field map here in a second.
Yeah, I'll knock out these 2 Q&As. Donald asked about, we talked about a little bit before, but right, it's no Mac support. No direct native Windows support planned, although, as we mentioned before, some people have been successful in running emulators. So, for example, there's a number of different emulators, although it's kind of hit and miss, and we don't have too much experience with it, but I know in theory it's possible, but you may hit some walls that you can't overcome with that. And Grant asked, can we pull in this information from custom columns on a script? That's a great question. We can't today, unfortunately, Grant. So that's a great feature request to support custom columns. That would be pretty cool. There's a couple of things we're doing in the next release that I think will make your life a little bit easier. We're adding a neat little feature that's not the custom columns, but it's a comments feature, which is kind of cool. But good feedback.
I do have after we finish the field map, I have a small section on some of the new stuff we're coming out with 5.1. So someone mentioned in chat, show the device list when armed. So this is the device list when armed. You'll notice that the mode column here, all of those are now showing red. That's because those are physically armed by the remote. That and the top header row is pretty much the only thing that changes once you arm.
Does the control panel update automatically? You do need to go to the Google Play Store, correct, Joel?
If we release an update, it'll prompt you like an app would prompt you to download. We also do website, Facebook announcements. Most of the time, the new versions come out with firmware. New firmware features. What, the poll?
Yeah.
New firmware features allow us to add new features in the control panel a lot of times, where the remote also needs a change in order to support a new feature in the control panel, which is why a lot of times those coincide.
Wow, so number 2 is actually, should pineapple be allowed on pizza? That is controversial.
It should not be.
It should be. Absolutely, so good.
Match made in heaven.
E-match made in heaven.
All right,
We got
so
all the Jason said.
no additional questions. I'm going to move on to the field map. So before I do that, I glanced up at my camera and it seems like I'm lagging terribly. Is that true, or is it just my way it's come back to me? Like if I
A little bit in and out, but
okay. As long as you can hear me okay, that's all I really care about.
You're doing all right. Keep up the good work.
Okay.
Good job, Joel. Just keep it up.
The fee for the control panel is 1 time.
Oh yeah, you beat me to it.
All right, field map. So this is the last main menu on the control panel. So the whole idea here is being able to plot your modules out on your shoot site. So the first thing is all my modules that are synced to remote are showing in this left navigation here. And if I just click on any of these modules, I can click and drag them out onto my shoot site and drop them wherever they're supposed to be. Now, this whole screen is just showing white. We've added the ability to use Google Earth, which you'll see add Google Earth image here in the top right. When I click on this, it's going to prompt Google Earth. In this case, it's GPS to where I live, so don't look. It's loading, so just give me a second. There we go. Okay. So you can type in an address of your shoot site, or you can simply zoom in and out to find trailer park. Close, but no. No, you can zoom in and out to find wherever your shoot site is. In this case, you'll see this little park right here on the river we're going to use. So just using my fingers, I can zoom in, or if I touch both fingers and push away, I can actually tilt the camera. So that way you can kind of rotate and position to wherever you're going to be firing your show. So we're just going to zoom into this field here. I know it's a little bit lagged from what I'm doing, so try and go slow. There we go. So let's just say this is my shoot site. This is where I'm gonna be firing everything. So then I'm gonna click on the Save Map Image button in the top middle. When I do that, it's gonna say, hey, what's the name of this site? I'll just put in test. Click OK. And you'll see it now put that image as my background for my field map. And it also saved it in the previously saved images in the top right here. So if I click on that, you'll see this field map used twice because I was testing it out earlier. But if you have common shoot sites, you can have those saved in there. You cannot currently upload your own image, but that is coming in the 5.1 version. So if you have a grid pattern, whatever it is, where you have everything plotted out, you can import that as long as the image is on your tablet, and it'll put that as the background. Okay. So now that we got our beautiful field here, we're going to start dropping modules. So with a lot of modules, obviously you might have multiples in the same position. So on the bottom kind of left middle here, we have this add position button. So let's go ahead and click on that. And let's just say center position. And click create. And it's going to give me a little position bucket. that I can then drag anywhere on my field map. And then I can take modules and put them into this position. So let's just grab that one, drop it in. You'll see that position now shows 1. So you might be asking yourself, why are these showing as red? Well, that's because these modules have an exception, such as missing continuity, low signal, low battery. And like the device list where you can see all the information, you can also click on a module here, within the field map to bring up that same grid. So if I just click on this 36M here, you'll see it's showing that I have Qs missing on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And shows my signal, my battery information, as well as my continuity and when it's supposed to be firing my script. So you don't have to go back to the device list. You can still access this directly from the field map. If there are no exceptions, they will all show as white. So the idea there is if a module or two have a problem, they should pop on your screen. In the case of a position where you have multiple modules in the position, so I just dragged another one in there, so now you see 2. If I click on that position, it then brings a pop-up that shows all the modules in my position. So the other options down here, we have an add module button. Again, that's for the offline mode. I can just add modules ahead of time, set them up on my field map, and then once I come online, those will pre-populate. Empty field map just removes all of the modules from my field map, but keeps my map background. So you just screwed up or whatever, and you just want to reset it. Reset all clears all modules as well as my field map. There's also a little trash can icon in the bottom right corner. And if I just click on a module, drag it down there, it's just going to reset it back to my module list. Or if it's a position you accidentally added, it'll just clear it from your list. So that's everything in this specific version.
If you turn off, sorry, one question, Joel. If you turn off the tablet, do the modules location, do you have to reset everything, or does everything get remembered for you?
It'll remember it. That's why we have the reset options, because if I set this all up in advance, turn everything off, turn it back on, it's going to stay on my tablet screen there.
Dusty asks, is there a way to search for an effect name? Not currently. Like, I think maybe you're referring to from the show control section, but we can talk about that a little bit further when we hit the Q&A questions. Can you set distances between modules on the field map?
Not currently.
That's good feedback.
But if you, it's something we toyed with, and it's not going to be in the 5.1 version, but it's definitely something we toyed with. But if you had a preset field map that already had plotted distances, you can still import that and use that if you want.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Yeah, like if you made your image in advance and put it on the Android, you could choose from that.
So funny enough, you can actually do that in this version, and you can for a long time. You just have to put the image into the root directory. But we made that much more clean in the future version where there's a button that says upload image. So, but if you wanted to today, go to your file explorer and go to field map images.
Ed wants to know how you find your current version.
I'm assuming of the control panel.
Yes.
So if I scroll out to my left navigation, there's an about button. Click on that, and it'll show you both the 8.2 firmware as well as the firmware version of the control panel. Currently, the 2.05 is the most updated version. The UI classification is just for our debugging purposes. If you have a UI issue, this is why I normally ask for a screenshot of. So if there's no additional field map questions, I would like to take you and show you some of the new 5.1 features, and then we'll be open for just general Q&A. So any other field map stuff?
We do have a question from Chris. You probably already covered this, but what does it look like when you add more than one module into a position?
Yeah.
So while you're still on the screen.
Yeah. So see my beautifully labeled position here. And if I just drag multiple modules, each time I drag a module, you see a little number in the top right of that module. It shows 1 in this case. Click another module, shows 2. So that'll just keep increasing as I add additional modules. And then if I just click on it, it's going to show me all those modules. And you can just drag a module out from the position if you want, and it's going to return to your module list. I see a social drink, so cheers. Cheers. Okay, I'm going to set up PowerPoint. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, and then just switch my share.
Well, thank you, Ryan, for explaining. Everyone's chit-chatting about a root directory on chat. So
Went too technical for you?
It's
Yeah.
what we were drinking too.
how do you explain a root directory? So yeah, I think Ryan had a good, yeah, it's basically like if you had a thumb drive, your root directory would be the primary directory. So when you first load that thumb drive, it's the main kind of highest level directory. So, you know, and then on something like Windows, like Ryan mentioned, it would be like the root directory of your C drive, but usually it's usually meant for like storage devices and stuff like that. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously in programming, it's,
Our tech nerds would get it, but
yeah,
it's okay. Anyway,
right. Anywho,
I'm going to move back over to PowerPoint just to show you some of the new few features with 5.1. Okay. Anyway, I meant to put these as animations, but that's okay. So these are a few of the features we're going to be adding, and I have screenshots and everything to go through those in more depth. So these will all be included with 5.1. We have some built-in troubleshooting. We have default settings that allow you to basically say, I always want to use certain features in my show. The ability to change script attributes, adding the custom image, which I just talked about, and adding reference points on your field map. So you'll see on my left menu now, we have all these additional options down here at the bottom. So the first one, send feedback. So if you have feedback, instead of having to go to your email, you can type it directly from here. If you have product that did not fire in your show, you can click this email unfired product report. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring up your script list. And let's say you didn't have a 3-inch shell fire, you can click +1 for the 3-inch shell and have it emailed to an email if you're choosing. So if you need to return inventory back to the bunker, it kind of keeps track of that a little bit easier. The help portal is going to take you to our future but close FAQ help portal. And then the settings, which the settings is all new, and I think it's my next slide. Yes. So here's the settings. So if you know you're always going to use audio, or you always have to use Deadman or things of that nature, you can set those as preset in the settings here. So just looking at the Deadman one here, this option is going to always add the Deadman argument to your script. So if you forget to do it, it's okay, just puts it in there. Audio obviously is probably more important for that, so it just always puts that audio box argument in there for you. And then that continuous clock I talked about on the show controls, that's down here at the bottom. We added the ability to remove the confirmation on jumping. So if you're expecting to use that feature and don't want that delay of having to confirm it. SMPTE, which is also coming with 5.1. And then this middle one here, deviceless display. If you have multiple scripts on your control panel and you want to only see modules for that script that is selected, you can enable this. And if you have the first script selected, it's only going to show modules and devices for that first script. So that way it's not congested with modules that maybe are missing or you just don't need to see right now for the second, third, fourth scripts. Jeff's question, yes to both. The next slide here kind of talks a little bit about that. If you use the audio box option here, it's always going to put audio box into your script regardless. The beauty of that is if it's missing, it's not like it's going to be a problem. It will show a warning on the control panel, hey, you have audio box designated, but you don't have an audio box on. But it's not like that's going to affect firing or anything. So if you think you're always going to use the audio box, yeah, you can just turn that on. It's just going to put that in there for you. So let's talk about the next screen here. So this is my script attributes from the show controls. So the Deadman option in audio box and SMPTE that will be available in 5.1. We've added the ability to change these live from the control panel. So why is this, really beneficial? Let's say you put Deadman in your script, but you forgot your Deadman trigger at home. You're like, crap, how do I fire my show? Hopefully you have a computer and you can edit it today. But going forward, you can just click on this option here and it brings up a little pop-up allowing you to change it. So if you needed to change it to a button on the remote, in case you still need the Deadman, you can do so. Or if you need to remove it altogether, you can do that as well. Or if you forgot to put it in there and need to now add it, you can do that too. Yeah, I am talking about 5.1 features, which will be coming soon. So going backwards, hold on a second. So going back here, same with the audio box, you can change the audio box name from here. So not only can you add it, you can also change it. We are adding we're planning on talking more about 5.1 in a later webinar, but I do want to mention this with 5.1. We kind of made it so it's a little more dummy proof. So if the audio file on your USB drive is not named to match the audio in your audio file name in your script, it'll play assuming there's only one audio file. But we also made the ability so you can just quickly change that here. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And then field map. So kind of already covered this, but you'll see the upload image button here on the top right. That allows you to add any image that's on your tablet as a field map. And then we also added an add reference button down here. So in this case, you'll see I added like an audio station. So if you want to specifically note things like slats or your audio station or your firing station or an obstacle, you could do that using the add reference button. And options just kind of put some of those reset options, things like that, into a consolidated button so it didn't clutter up our screen. At this point, it covers everything control panel, I believe. So I would like to pass it over to Scott to talk about Command Center.
Thank you, Joel. Good job.
Unless anyone has questions, I suppose, and we could take a short break.
Sure. Can you change the firing module channel from the control panel? Not yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not yet. So that is a feature in development, but it can absolutely be done, and we're working on that. 5.1 ready for July 4th. Oh, we're hoping so. So yeah, that's hopefully it's the plan. So, all right, you want me to kind of do a little bit? So we could probably do a full webinar on the Command Center. So my plan is not to go through all the tidbits and nitty gritty, but I do want to at least kind of share some of it. I did actually, do you have a Command Center today? All right, cool. I tried to set up my camera for this, so everyone here, bear with me. I'm trying to get this so I can actually see what I'm showing you guys. Hold on. This Mario hat's making me dumb. All right.
Nice background there, Scott.
Oh, I did. Someone made the, you guys can see my screen. Get off my screen. All right, there we go. All right, how do I can't see me on video. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. All right. So I actually have a Command Center here, and I'm going to do my best here, and I apologize if this is certainly no way to show a product, but this is the Command Center that I'm holding right here. So for scale, this may give you a relative understanding of size. I'm telling you right now, like I'm holding this thing, it is a hefty unit, okay? And one of the reasons this thing is so hefty is because it has a massive 15 amp hour battery built into this. So this battery in this unit's like about this big, and it also actually has believe it or not, a balancing weight on the front of this unit to keep it from nice and secure on a table, right? So like the wind doesn't tip it over, or if you had like a really heavy tablet, it's not gonna kind of fall over. But the entire idea of the Command Center is that this is a complete all-in-one device, right? So if you had never seen COBRA before and you got this for the first time, you would kind of assume that this entire setup is fully integrated, right? So you've got your 18R2 built right here, just as you would expect. You've got a power button here. You've got your booster built in. You've got a really nice kind of storage compartment. This is really awkward, built right in, so you can actually put stuff in here. There's a nice little notepad on the top, and it actually comes with a nice German quality, high quality fine tip dry erase marker. Side ports on the side of this unit, right? So you've got your nicely labeled USB, dead man, and SMPTE timecode inputs labeled right on the side. And then on the other side, you've got your antenna cap and a charge port right over here. And again, I can kind of show this to you guys nicely right here. One of the cool things about this unit is you can put whatever tablet that you want in here, okay? And you can also rotate this, right? So if I'm like, I can rotate this up. So you'll notice here, it's just showing it an angle, and I can actually rotate this down and up, right? And what's also cool is if you wanted to take out your tablet, like let's say you didn't want it stored within here, you simply take it out, you move on, you can close this, you can bring it home, or you can put it right into the unit. So it's really super easy to install into your unit. and it is quite hefty and durable, and I will say a little bit heavy, which is kind of nice. I am sharing my screen, so if you are interested in the control panel, you can click on the main products tab and you can go directly to the command center. Sorry, I should have said command center before. From within here, you can see a lot of wonderful, beautiful photos that Ryan did such a great job of putting together for us. That's actually Jonah's handwriting, correct, Jonah? Yes, it is. It's Jonah's handwriting on there. So you can see some nice pictures of this. And you can also notice that we have a couple options. You can purchase it pre-assembled, right? And what that means is that if you already own an 18R2 or if you own any peripherals like whatever, Deadman booster, things like that, if you just purchase it, you can very easily just install those in there. Or when you're buying it, you can actually choose to purchase it like with an 18R2 or with a booster, and then we'll assemble that stuff for you. And then the other thing that we did is we have this, it's kind of a hidden gem, and thank you, Ryan, for taking an insane amount of hours for putting together the Command Center DIY do-it-yourself product. So if you're a tinkerer, if you're a geek, kind of like us, you can actually purchase pretty much every single component that goes into creating a command center. So we notice a lot of our clients like to build things on their own. This gives you the ability to buy the individual parts that go into the main command center. We've got links to every one of them. And also what's really cool is this is kind of showing off the fact that it's a very modular design. So if anything ever needed to get replaced for whatever reason, obviously, if there was an issue and it wasn't your fault, we'll take care of it. But if there's anything, over time, a charge port, wear and tear or whatever, you name it. And then we also fully publish the complete schematics and the design of what this is. So there's a lot of really cool kind of components in here. So if you're a geek and you're interested in this kind of stuff, we've got lots of documentation for you on that. But overall, it's just a really, really cool product. I know it's a little bit pricey for people, and sometimes people simply say, hey, it's just like an 18R2 in a case with like a cord that goes to your tablet. I can assure you that this project with there's actually a substantial amount of time from R&D that was invested to go into this, and part of that price includes kind of our time. We got to make a little bit. We have to make some money on this to kind of recover things. So we do thank you for your appreciation of things. So, but anyway, that's kind of a general introduction into the command center. I'm sure people may have questions, but it's a kind of a fun, neat product that we sell. All right. Looks like everyone's kind of muted in here. So at this point, I think unless anyone's got anything, is it less to buy it as a pre-built? What was that? Oh, cheaper to build it. Oh, wow, that question came in a bunch. It is not, actually. It's do not buy this. We actually very specifically kind of priced it out. So it's the same price if you were to buy all the components than you would for the command center. Putting this together on your own from scratch, it's just not worth the headache or the support. Just buy it, have us put it together. We know exactly what we're doing. It's going to come to you and properly put together. So you're not going to save any money by getting it by buying the parts individually. Cool. So all right, hold on, pulling this up. No Q&A. Okay, so I guess being the moderator, I will state that we are ready to move into the formal Q&A part of the webinar. However, it looks like our Q&A questions are empty. And so that being said, it looks like we may have some Q&A questions coming in from chat. So what I'll probably do, unless there's any objection from the panelists, I would suggest that we'll go into our kind of second phase of Q&A, which is basically us just kind of saying thank you and good night and just hanging out for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever it takes just to kind of let everyone wind down. So
as people kind of leave the webinar, I want to mention we are doing another webinar next week. Zach is hosting that one on COBRA support.
Maybe is that, yeah. Oh,
and all previous webinars are uploaded to the YouTube page, including this one. So if you missed any of the previous weeks, make sure to go to the COBRA Firing Systems YouTube page. You can check out all of our recordings there. This one will be live in a few days on YouTube as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, support and successful show strategies, where Zach will demonstrate, the goal is to demonstrate our new help portal. And we're going to get a little bit of input from everybody on support strategies and best tips across all panelists, which will be kind of fun. So, all right, well, thank you so much, Joel. We really appreciate everything you did in this webinar. Great job. And thank you to the panelists, and thank you to everyone for attending. Email us at help@cobrafiringsystems.com. Call us with the phone number on our website. We also have live chat. And yeah, we look forward to a great June.